Good afternoon from China. I've been thinking a lot about success and how success can mislead us and indeed damage us, or more particularly in the context of this recording, how success can damage other people. I don't mean the kind of damage that arises from being envious of someone who is more successful than we are. I mean the kind of damage that can result from trying to reproduce the success that other people enjoy using methods that can't work. To give this a punchy title, let's call it How to Destroy a Child's Life. We've all been there and we all know how this can happen. We come across a successful student, someone whose achievements we envy and would like to repeat. They're usually students who we think will go on to some kind of glory, involving some version of fame, happiness, power, achievement. And when this happens, we tend to ask ourselves why it happens. And in particular, why did it happen to this student and not to others? And so we ask ourselves, what happened back here somewhere that made this student more successful than others? And there are some obvious answers. Nothing more remarkable than that the student had particularly good DNA that it inherited from its parents. It could be that the particular parenting that produced this child was unusually successful, skilled, or wise. It could be that the child went to a particularly good school. It could even be that the child, in some cultures at least, had particularly skilled, dedicated, and effective tutors or tutoring. All of these are likely to be our natural assumptions about what led to the success of this student. And so, since there's probably not much we can do about DNA, at least now, we might look at how the parenting was done. We might look at which school the student went to and what its methods were. And we might even try to find out the names of the student's tutors in order perhaps to avail ourselves of their services for our own children, or perhaps for ourselves. But to say this much is not to say enough. After all, we are not simple results of even a very small number of influences like these, just 4. We are, for example, the products of our food. We are the products, certainly, of our society. We are the products of our nationality. We are the products of our environment. And when you start to make this list, you begin to realize that it is extremely long. We are the products of, for example, the books that we have read, the films that we have seen, the music that we have listened to, and the art that we have experienced. We are the products of travel and as of staying at home. Once we get to this point, we begin to feel a little panicky because although we might feel that we can do something about our parenting, and we can probably do something about our school, and we may, under some circumstances, if we think it's a good idea, although it probably isn't, do something about our tutors, we can't entirely control our food, our society, our nationality, our environment, our travel, our home life, our books, our films, our music, and our art. At least we can't control them completely, if at all, in some cases. And even when we've said all this, so that we've now got, I don't know, something like 15 influences, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of the number of things that have impinged upon this single individual that we think of as a successful student. If we add more, we start to see that things are much worse than we supposed. The things that I've added in red are the things that we don't tend to value, like play or idleness or fun or dreaming. I haven't said much, for example, about pets. And what about all the things that influence us that we don't even recognize as identifiable, classifiable things like play and idleness and fun and dreaming? What about the unknowns that influence us all the time, from the moment that we are born until the moment that we die? So you can see that this chaos of factors that make us what we are, all of which interact with us in different ways to different levels of intensity over different periods of time, mean that it is actually impossible to say in what exactly this successful student is made, or what has made this successful student successful. But what we do tend to do, because this is not a philosophy of despair, is we tend to say, let's take just any student. Are we to say, in the face of this extraordinary chaos of influences, that we should therefore just throw our hands up in horror and do nothing? Just let things happen any old how? Well, no. We should always do what we can do. In other words, we should do what we can do, but only to the extent that it is useful, and wise. And this is really the point that I want to make. We can't do anything about DNA, not at least for now. And we've said that we can do something about parenting and school. So what do? We tend to become obsessive parents. We tend to think that what we do as parents is so big a factor in the success or failure of this student that we have to control this and thereby control the student because everything depends upon it. And part of our obsessive parenting gives rise to what you could call intensive education. That we start to increase the amount of study. We start to add to the pressure under which our students, our children are. We expect them to work for longer and longer and longer at more and more things. And the effect of all this, and it is a very dangerous effect indeed, the effect of all this is to eliminate all the space within which all the other things that positively affect that child exist. In other words, we become so obsessed about our parenting and so obsessed about our formal education, including tutoring, that we crush out of our children's lives all the space and all the opportunities in which things like idleness and fun and books and films and pets and music and play can. And as a result, we squeeze the life from our children, we suffocate them by taking away the air that allows them to breathe, and then wondering why they feel suffocated. And just before I finish, because that's really all I want to say, I'd like to observe one or two other things that really belong on this diagram. Because these influences are by and large things that we would, for the most part, think to be positive, even though we very happily eliminate them in our obsessive drive for achievement. But there are some other things that have probably influenced this successful student that we should also allow in our diagram. And what are they? Well, we should allow the successful student, indeed any student, to experience failure. We should allow any child the opportunity to learn how to deal with disappointment. We should not protect them from pain within reason. We should not protect them from grief as when their pets die. We should not protect them from anxiety. Because anxiety goes with life. If we do that, if we do protect our children from all these things, then we are again denying them some of the air and some of the experience that is necessary for life to be lived. And one is tempted to observe that if this successful student has never experienced failure or disappointment or grief or anxiety, experienced idleness, boredom, or finding themselves not at the top of whatever heap it is that they want to be top of, then what we may find is that the glory that is promised for them turns to disaster and misery. We want to destroy a child's life. We will cut out all the space and all the air within which the influences on each of us that have made us who we are can live and breathe. Don't do it. Thank you for listening.